Manchester United have released their figures for the second quarter of the financial year today, with the club in the midst of a potential takeover. Our chief reporter, Garve Solikol, is alongside me. Good afternoon to you. What do we deduce from these numbers?
Well, look, it's a bit of a mixed picture. These results are for the final 3 months of last year. And basically, they show that total revenue was down almost 10% on the same 3 months the previous year in 2021. And that's mainly because Manchester United weren't in the Champions League, and also they had 2 fewer home games at Old Trafford in that period. Also, if you dig into the accounts, you will see that Manchester United's debt is up to £535 million. Now, they say that is largely due to the weak pound, but you have to remember that the reason Manchester United have a debt of £535 million now is because when the Glazer family bought the club 18 years ago, they bought the club in a leveraged buyout, and they loaded £550 million of debt onto the club, and 18 years later it still stands at 535 million. United were a debt-free club before the Glazers arrived. The results also show that United have borrowed £206 million, which means that their total borrowings are now £741.9 million. There is some other figures in the accounts. We've also found out that the Glazer family, for instance, will not be taking a dividend in this quarter. The wage bill for the quarter actually was down 21%, a decrease of £20.4 million. A lot of people wondering if that has anything to do with the fact that Cristiano Ronaldo left the club during that period. United say that decrease is down to squad turnover and also not being in the Champions League, because a lot of their players get paid more when they are in the Champions League. So a mixed picture, and just looking into these figures gives you an idea of perhaps why the Glazer family think now is the right time to sell Manchester United, especially if they can get the £6 billion that they want for the club.
Talking of club owners, and I think it's always been pretty clear with a large section of supporters that the Glazers aren't particularly popular with some Manchester United fans. Significant developments today on who can, in the future, own and not own your club, and in specifically the owners and directors test from the Premier League.
Yeah, just in the last few minutes, the Premier League have announced that they had a shareholders meeting today, and at that meeting it was unanimously agreed to make a number of changes to the owners and directors test. And these are significant changes because on the face of it, it is going to be harder to pass the test. The test has been criticised a lot in the past, people saying that it's toothless, it should be a lot more difficult to pass the test. And the Premier League have said, for instance, that they're going to be a whole new range of disqualifying events. So, for instance, if you've been found guilty of human rights abuses, you will not be able to own or be the director of a Premier League club. Also, if you've been found guilty of offences including involving violence, corruption, fraud, tax evasion and hate crimes, you will not be able to own a Premier League club or be the director. They've also decided that chief executives of clubs are also going to be brought within the scope of this test, so they will have to pass the test as well. And it's worth pointing out that annual checks are made. So it's not a case of you take the test once and you pass it and that means you can remain an owner and director forevermore. No, you will be checked out every year.
So current owners will be subjected to the new test?
Yeah, every additional annual due diligence will be undertaken by the Premier League on incumbent directors to ensure ongoing compliance with the owners and directors test. And this is interesting as well in light of the Manchester United takeover, because the Premier League say a range of increased transparency measures, including the requirement to publicly disclose individuals, companies disqualified under the test, and an obligation on the league to create an annual report of compliance. So we're going to get a lot more information about who has taken the test and why they may have failed. So Premier League trying to be a lot more transparent, and also when it comes to takeovers, they say there will be greater clarity and transparency over the due diligence to be conducted by the league on a takeover. And they also say that these measures come into force with immediate effect. So when the Manchester United takeover, when that accelerates, when perhaps we know who's the preferred bidder, when they apply to take this owners and directors test, it should be a lot more transparent, and we should have a lot more information coming out of the Premier League than we have had in the past.
So it's practically speaking, do you think that this realistically narrows the pool of potential people who can now buy a Premier League football club?
I think certainly that's what the Premier League will say. The Premier League will say we've listened to criticism of our owners and directors test, and we have reacted, and we have reacted unanimously. And they will also say that these measures are coming in immediately, straight away. And they also finish off by saying that a final package of reforms will be considered by the clubs at the league's AGM in June. So they seem to suggest that this is not the end of it. Their rule book is likely to be strengthened, reinforced and beefed up even more in the summer.